Hey everyone, this is Austin. Welcome back to another episode of SDRescue. I think this is episode 43 of SDRescue. I'm once again joined by Grayson Fulbright, my co-host and copywriter extraordinaire. Grayson, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm really excited to look into this email because we don't get to talk about this area of a sales process much. And we're really going to be diving into what do you do if you get someone who registers for your event? What can you do with them? What angles do you have? How could you start conversations based on someone's interest in a marketing event that your brand has? We're going to be looking at kind of two different ways to approach connecting with like a registered event attendee and how you can try to either get them more interested in your brand or try to start a sales conversation.
Yeah, and I think this is a super hot topic for SDRs. And it's an area that doesn't get talked about a lot because most organizations send emails like the one we have. And most leads that come from webinars, ebook downloads, or other gated resources that marketing puts out get sent to SDRs. Most of the time, I'm talking about it in the areas that I have experience in SaaS technology companies. Typically, that's what happens. There are a lot of startups that run a growth model very similar to that. They run some kind of gated content, paid ads against it, get people to opt in, and then the people that opt in to the gated content get sent to SDRs for scheduling a qualification call, and then eventually those get moved into an AE interaction. But like Grayson said, want to talk about because my experience and my numbers, looking at other people in the industry and looking at just my personal experience, is that ebook download leads, webinar leads, those sorts of leads often convert the same or worse than outbound sales efforts at times. Depends, but just my experience and talking to some peers that run marketing agencies, that's what they say.
And so I would say the reason why is because of the approach that most companies adopt in handling leads that are sourced this way.
I agree. And so what we're going to look at is what are some ways you could approach it? So the status quo, which is very which is very similar to the email we have, really personifies the status quo well. And we'll look at ways you can change it, make it a little bit more compelling. So I will jump into the email, make sure that's the right. Yes. All right. We can see a Google Doc, correct?
I believe that's episode 39.
Wrong one. Wrong episode. Okay, hang on. I'm going to stop sharing. And I will pull up the correct episode. Too many episodes.
Really didn't catch episode 39.
Yeah, for anyone that didn't have episode 39, hey, we were going to stop by there, but I guess we will. We won't. We're going to go to episode 43. If I have it pulled up. Maybe I have to pull it up. In the interim, Grayson, say something interesting. I'm just saying. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So, I think you really brought up a good topic here because this is one of the strange kind of paradoxes of sales where, as the SDR role has grown, the kind of inbound leads through events or ebook downloads, or maybe even through, social selling efforts on, clicking through ads on Facebook or LinkedIn, that tends to be a very common realm where SDRs spend their time trying to start conversations and book meetings. And yet I think the paradox is that while that has been a primary audience that SDRs target to try to stir up opportunities for the brand, they tend to have a very similar approach to reaching out to those people as they would, like you said, like an outbound lead. I think it's weird that it's like, I get so many email conversations that get started when I do check out, ebooks or attend events, and it almost feels like I'm being treated like an outbound lead. And I think that is really what we're going to be diving into today is not only the implications behind someone like registering for an event or showing interest in some content of your brand, but the next steps behind it and what you really need to be doing to kind of connect that journey between them first entering into the realm of your brand, into being led to either a conversation, a meeting, or a realization.
Yeah, and so you're right. I think a lot of the efforts do treat it like, I think the other thing too is that the assumption and the story that gets told to SDRs is that these people have requested stuff. they should be ready to convert. But really, in the buyer's journey, a lot of the people just aren't there. If they want to convert, they're going to request a demo, not read an ebook. Right? They'll just go right to your site and say, "Hey, I would really like to see your product because I think it solves a problem that I know I have and want to solve." Whereas like, oh, I'm reading about something that's kind of related to your product. So yeah, they're just not there in the journey. So anyway, here's the original email. Hi, Austin. I hope you're having a great day. I was actually, so I'm really happy about that. I'm reaching out because you had registered for one of our webinars. Currently, we are reaching out to registered attendees to offer a training roadmap session. The session includes discussing what goals your organization currently has with online technology training and how our company's platform can help achieve those goals. Our customers love these sessions as it gives a good time to ask questions about our platform or just training trends in general with solutions such as AWS, Azure, and GCP. Would you be interested in having a discussion this week or next? Alrighty. So I'm sure the copywriter in Grayson is raging at, I hope you're having a great day written out, but I will try not to dwell on that part. So this personifies what I think is the approach to inbound leads or leads that have opted into gated content of some kind. And the pitch is, hey, what I find interesting is they didn't even reference which webinar I registered for. There are now a ton of webinars that I register for. So the first thing is as I'm not going to say that the writing confused me, but you had an opportunity to put my mind to be thinking about at least the subject or topic I was researching or consuming content about before, but it stayed vague. And because it stayed vague, that's just a lost opportunity to set the mind space of the prospect while they're reading, because they just said you'd registered for one of our webinars. They're also talking, one of the things, the orange, currently we're reaching out to registered attendees to offer the training roadmap session. I think that's a copywriting pitfall that a lot of reps fall into, is either they feel uncomfortable or don't know how to approach the ask that they perceive is, like they're asking for something. And so what they do is, instead of copywriting, they just they write in copy what they're doing via their email. That's something I see when you train new salespeople and bring them on, or new SDRs. That's a common thing. If you're an SDR writing, make sure you're not writing what you're doing by sending the email in your body. That's one copywriting pro tip from me, who's not a copywriter, but everyone knows you're doing it, should know you're doing it by the fact that you sent the email and what's in the body. You don't have to tell people that you're doing it. I'm kind of staying out of the philosophical things of the email because I want Grayson to have that and want to hear his thoughts on it first. But just in your intro, you've consumed a lot of space in those first two lines to reference that I registered for a webinar that I probably don't remember because I watch a lot of them, or because I don't remember your specific company. And then the second line was telling me what you're already doing by sending the email.
Yeah, I think the big problem I have here is a problem I have with a lot of outreach that I see, and it's that salespeople tend to kind of forget the situation they're in and the context they're in, and also the leverage that they have available. Which, of course, in a true outbound, like cold email, there's not a lot of leverage. There's not a lot of context. You're creating context, but especially in this situation, it's like, dude, this is not just some person or some lead. They did find your brand and decide, out of all the other information that they might have found online, decided to share their private information or their business information to learn from your brand. That is something that not all of your competitors can necessarily say or claim. And I think that this intro reminds me a lot of if someone were a vendor for a customer, and the customer support person that keeps in contact with the customer for important information, for handling critical issues, Like, how effective do you think that customer success person would be if they called and every time they called, they said, "Hi, this is blank from blank. Do you have 15 seconds for me to tell you why I called?" And like approaching it like a cold call, right? It's like, even though the relationship is, this is a vendor reaching out to give support to a customer, it's totally out of context. Even if they know your brand, if they're busy, they might just click and hang up. And so it's so important for you to start off the message correctly, so that not only you and yourself and the process and the future state you're wanting to bring, but the prospect reading it can actually understand what's going on here. Like, anybody can say, "I hope you're having a great day." How much weight should this prospect actually give to this specific message? And so, to kind of go into the philosophy a little bit deeper, I think that if you have gotten a registration from a person that is qualified enough for you to spend sales resources reaching out to, I would make it very clear and known in the first couple of lines that, hey, you reached out to attend this specific webinar from this brand, and I wanted to follow up for XYZ. I think just adding that and transitioning the intro in that way would probably magnify the number of opens that this email would have gotten, because it gets rid of the people who are either not avid email users or who don't like sales outreach and are tired of it. Because anybody who reads, "I hope you are having a great day," most buyers are sophisticated and experienced enough with cold email to know that's a no-no flag, to know that, like, this isn't a person that is familiar enough with me to get to the point. They're trying to like spice me up or something. I mean, there are always those people, of course, like, client to customer, or maybe internally, that will use it as a habit, and that's okay. But especially with cold outreach like this, you got to be careful what signs and what styles you're using, especially in an intro, because I would claim that, like, the phrase at the very beginning probably invalidates most of the people that would actually want to read about the webinar that they registered for.
Yeah, the webinar they watched. This is post webinar follow up a couple of weeks after. And so I will say that this template is this email. Sorry, not template. This email is a template that someone loaded up into a sequence in Outreach and set and fired it off. Plain and simple. Like, there just isn't enough. There is no personalization, right? Literally none, except my name, not even my company. And it's very generic, right? And it's that you go into the second paragraph, right? And the paragraph is explaining what the training roadmap session is. And I think if you're ever at the point where you're trying to explain what your offer is, you probably have a bad offer. Like, if somebody is not going to intrinsically understand that there's value when you say what the offer is, it's probably not a good one, right? Because the offer should be enticing. Like, when someone doesn't have to explain to me that, I don't know, let's do a really rudimentary example. Someone doesn't have to explain to me why a delicious hot fudge sundae would be of interest to me, depending on where I'm at, right? Whether if I just ate dessert, it probably isn't. But what I'm saying is, people just say hot fudge sundae, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a delicious dessert. I already know that, to a degree, that's valuable. I don't have to go, hey, would you like a delicious hot fudge sundae? It has ice cream in it, and it's frozen dairy product that's very sweet, and you're really going to enjoy it. It's a great way to finish off a meal if you eat it after consuming dinner. And I feel like that's a trap that a lot of salespeople and SDRs, especially when you're early on, but also, like, it's a habit that can continue, where you feel this burden to explain your offer out by breaking it down into what it is. And it's probably the worst way to describe your offer or service, by just explaining what it is, components. The value of something should be greater than just the sum of what the components that make it up are. And so I think that's one reason why it's not compelling. I think that the consultative approach, these people are reaching out to Fortune 2000 companies. And I think that if an SDR that was an entry-level sales employee reached out and I was going to trust on him to talk to me about how we can achieve my goals, then I would want him to come to me with something that has credibility behind it. You don't have to have credibility as the seller. Like, you don't need to have been a trainer for a Fortune 2000 company, but come to me with someone that either someone or something that has. Like, that's where it gets lost on me a little bit, is by breaking down what it is we can talk about trends, which is cool, but I can look at trends myself. I don't need to get on a phone call with you to look at trends. There's media outlets, and I'm sure there's I'm not in the cloud training space, but I'm sure there are media outlets, magazines, trade publications, websites, blogs, people in that space that would be happy to explain the trends better than me sitting on a 30-minute qualification call with an SDR, because that's what it is.
Yeah, I think positioning is really important here, and I do think that they shot themselves in the foot a bit because of their over explanation. Because I honestly think that this email would have probably been more convincing out of ambiguity if they simply stopped after the second line and went straight into their CTA. Hey, I hope you're having a great day. I'm reaching out because you registered for a webinar. Currently, we're offering a training roadmap session. Would you be interested?
Yeah,
Right?
100%.
Like it's because it's so direct and boiled down. It's a yes or no thing. It gets to the point, and although you're not explaining the details, which by the way you can explain later, but you're keeping. It's almost like you're framing it as though you don't need to convince them.
It's assumptive.
It's assumptive. It's a standard complimentary offer because my brand's professional and we deal with hundreds of brands like you, like yours, but we're still going to spend time with you. We're not like this big brand that's going to forget about you and leave you in the dust. We want to reach out, give you the standard info that like hundreds of companies are using right now to achieve X goal, Y goal, Z goal, right? Like the way you position offers are so important. And I think another thing that they did here, like we can talk all day about like the need for being concise and like when and why you would want to go into more detail to explain certain things. But at the heart of it, if you're going to add more words, which requires a human being to then read those extra words, you want to make sure that every additional word you're adding in there is going to actually help your case or build momentum towards the realization that you want this prospect to have. I think the big no-no that's happening here is this big explanation, this big like context paragraph that they're trying to add here to convince the prospect to move forward. It's just assumption ridden. It's like, honestly, if we go through this, okay, the session includes discussing what goals your organization currently has with online technology training. Cool. So every person, every prospect who either doesn't have goals or that person you reached out to, they aren't responsible for those types of goals, you just lost that conversation. You lost that ability to have a conversation. And then you continue and you switch to, and how sellers companies platform can help, blah, 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 blah. Well, now you're just pitching. So it's like, you see how like what started as this like kind of unique, well-positioned relationship that this brand had, which was like this person registered to attend a webinar. And it's like after the webinar and they've already experienced and spent a little bit of time with their brand. You went from that to now it's like, oh, you're like having to over explain stuff and you're making assumptions about my business and who I am. And now you're pitching me a product. It's like the whole relationship is going to get permanently changed, and their perspective on the seller and this brand is going to get permanently changed because of how this offer is being presented. And so to kind of go back to what I had said earlier, I think this person could have simply left it as, hey, I'm reaching out because you registered for one of our webinars recently and wanted to share a complimentary training roadmap session. Would you be interested? If they have questions, you can always follow up and answer them. If they want to know specifics, you'll be glad to, right? It's like that. There are always times and places to add or remove information. But when it's initial outreach, when you don't have a conversation secure, that is when you should really be being careful about how much information you include and when you include it.
The other thing that I think they do is they kill themselves in the CTA with doing the 1980s door-to-door salesman. Would this week or next week be better for you? I'm like, dude, just say, would you be interested in having a discussion? Like, don't try to pin me down through rhetoric. Like your copy isn't going to convince me that just because I'm reading it this week or next doesn't, be like, oh, they give me this only 2 options, so I guess I have to pick one of those. No, it's going to be, I'm just going to not respond to you. Because remember, not hitting delete block or right click block is always my first option. So like if you're that, and the two option rhetoric was invented in a time when people were in person and interacting right face to face to another, and the social interaction could be leveraged to put pressure on the prospect to be like, oh, I don't want to tell them no to their face, that kind of thing. But these people will tell you no to your face. First off, most people will. Second off, the first option is always right click block for most B2B decision makers. So if you're trying to rhetoric me into a meeting, you will fail. You will go right to right click block, at least in my experience. So anyway, I just think that you could have taken that off completely.
Think about the implications of that too. I mean, like, outbound's hard enough, but I mean, if you're getting right click blocked from inbound people,
a gated lead,
a gated lead, finding your
content.
brand and spending time to like look at stuff that you're producing, like that's a bad no. That's like getting mass unsubscribes from your newsletter list. And what do you do to prevent that? Like you don't pitch in your newsletter list hard.
Just like if you have all the good equity.
Right, exactly.
From your marketing. All right, so let's get into the rewrite before we run out of time. We got 9 minutes, but there's a lot there. But I just want to pick apart that approach, because this approach, this is not this one company. Everybody does this. Not everybody. Blanket statement. Hyperbole, excuse me. This is a very common approach. And we've talked about it a little bit, but it needs to evolve, especially if you're paying good money and time, effort, and marketing. The marketing department's putting good work and they're getting results. Sales and SDRs can't screw this up because they are, period. So anyway, here's the rewrite really quick. Hi, Austin. Would you like me to send you the training plans that SAP, Hulu, and Microsoft use to keep their staff on the cutting edge of cloud technologies? Many Fortune 2000 organizations have difficulty measuring the impact of their annual training spend. It is very difficult I use difficult twice. It is very difficult to quantify if technical talent is becoming more skilled as a result of training efforts. I've put together the training plans our top customers use to upskill their talent, and I'd like to share them with you and connect about your training objectives for 2021. Can I follow up with those plans? I don't know. I don't want to use difficult again. But anyway, that's a copywriting misnomer. That's a copywriting thing, nitpicking. Go ahead, Grayson.
Yeah, so initial thoughts. I love this rewrite that you did. The only like big picture feedback is I'd still leverage maybe in the intro the fact that you are letting them know that they registered for your webinar and here's the webinar, just to kind of really leverage that relationship.
Yeah.
But what I love here that you've done, and I do this sometimes too. It's a style of using pain points and future states together. Is essentially right. You're reaching out because at the end of the day, you want to send them a guide because the guide's going to quote help them. Well, help them what? Well, the way you positioned here is basically saying that like many organizations the pain point is that they can't reach this future state. You're not saying that there's a specific pain or a specific issue out there. The issue is that this market is having problems getting this future state to be real for them. And you did that twice. You basically said, hey, many Fortune 2000 orgs really have difficulty measuring the impact of annual training spend. That's a thing that many people want and can't do apparently. And then you follow up, even though you use difficult twice, which that's okay. You follow up and you say, and not only that, not only is it difficult to measure the impact, it's also difficult to then quantify if they've even become more skilled as a result of training spend. And so I use that often because what it can sometimes do is kind of paint the most direct picture possible of like, hey, there's this problem that can cause people like you that are here and want to be here. Like there's a problem that is preventing you from that. Let me help out with a call or send you a thing to help. That's a really good way to like position the pain itself, because then you're not saying like, like this is what's happening in your life and I'm sure it sucks, right? The pain sometimes is not that something's wrong, it's that they're missing opportunity. So you're kind of flipping it around and saying, hey, organizations want this, organizations are competing for this outcome, but it's difficult to grab it, man. And so I love the positioning there because it really adds momentum to the idea of seeing a training plan that SAP and Hulu and Microsoft use.
And so one thing that I do that I'm cautious about, right, is name dropping. The only reason I put those companies' names in there is because they are companies that are customers of the company that reached out, and the and it's in the customer, the ideal customer profile of that company. So I just want to add that, because I'm not just name dropping big logos. The context of this email was sent to me, but the ideal customer profile for this company is Fortune 2000 organizations. So I'm not going to get into why they sent me an email. That's outside the scope of this thing, of the conversation, but within scope, SAP, Hulu, Microsoft. I'm not sure if Hulu is, but I'm pretty sure they are. Either way, I know Microsoft and SAP are Fortune 2000 for sure. They're big enterprise companies. And so that is social proof, because like I said, you as an SDR don't need to be the expert. That is the huge misnomer, that everyone thinks they have to be the expert to have conversations with people. You just have to have valuable expertise that comes from a credible source and be the person sharing it. It's okay to be the messenger in this case, especially if you're an SDR, right? If the problem with what has happened with like the challenger sale being really successful is that everyone wants every rep in their org to be a challenger, and like everyone has to be an expert. And that's kind of the thing of that. And I love challenger sale. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying that there's too much emphasis on that. And what there needs to be a source of expertise. And then you need to go as the messenger, which, you can have a couple challengers or SMEs in your org, and then have the SDRs go and be even evangelists of that subject matter expertise. So I think, and like Grayson said, positioning, you want to position this as, I'm going to share something of value to you. One, I would like for them, I want to get the meeting, but I'm just going for the yes of, hey, is this person, I think Grayson's right. If I add something about the webinar to that hook, that, we've established something previously, like there's a previous interaction here, I think that would make this even better. So with that in mind, if there's a previous interaction hook, previous interaction credibility baked into the hook in the first line, and it goes into the problems, and then it goes into the give, which is, I'm going to share with you the plans that our top customers that are like you and trying to do the same things. SAP and Microsoft are, Microsoft they make Azure, right? So if they're using this, wouldn't you like to see how the people who make Azure keep their people up to date on Azure and how they do that? That's as, from the horse's mouth as it gets. So that's what I mean. And this company does have the potential to leverage things of value like that. And SDRs out there, your company does too. So getting the right ask, and more importantly, the ask doesn't even have to be amazing. Like, look, it's still going to be a sit down call and talking about their goals and talking about, their problems with their training, but it's the way you position it and talk about it, because it can't sound like a sales meeting. Whereas a lot of these webinar inbound lead things, they assume that the prospect is so far down the buyer's journey, when in reality, they're not. They need big incentives, big value to move from somebody who just watches your stuff or downloads your PDFs to somebody who's actually interested in talking to you. Bridging that gap between, I just want to watch your stuff, into, I want to talk to you because I actually trust that you could give me something that I care about, is the gap that exists with, inbound leads from gated content that people just are not addressing. And it's a big part of what SDRs are asked to do. So.
Yep.
All right. Soapbox is over, but we've got 2 minutes. Do you have anything else to talk about, Grayson? I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
No, if you want to scroll down, one thing I was looking at, maybe I can try to rewrite this real quick, but this is how I would like take what you've got and maybe just rewrite it the same.
Boop, boop, boop. We're doing a live rewrite here. You're watching copywriting expertise in action, ladies and gentlemen.
There you go. Ta-da.
You could do that. And then add something like, hey, you registered for the webinar about whatever. That's the one thing I would fix. Like, if you're going to say you went to our webinar, at least reference which one it was or what it was about, like something, right? I just say, hey, you watched our webinar about, I can't remember. I don't even remember what it was about.
Well, see,
so long.
I know we're almost at time here, but an example of how you can like distribute information to really get the point across is watch. You could maybe subject line here.
Oh yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
you
You can
could-
use the subject line. Good point.
Maybe you can do like webinar name and then a little line and then follow up. You can keep the intro here because now you've already mentioned the webinar. And then maybe you can have as the transition line to really convince them, say, since I noticed you recently attended one of our webinars on topic, I wanted to send this over so your team can review. So, you know, you'd have to adjust the copy around it, but I mean, like, that is one way that you can like really use information in different areas of an email to paint the full picture without either overloading them with information or being too vague and too ambiguous.
Yeah.
So I know we're at the top of the hour. So for everyone who was able to join us or watch today via YouTube, thank you so much. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you can to get more updates on these videos. We'll be doing this every week, Monday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And make sure to bring your own emails or bring emails that you've seen if you want us to review and rewrite.
Yeah. Connect with us on LinkedIn and send us those emails. Until next week, we'll see you later.
Signing off.